In the top stories, Ministry of Agriculture hosts Policy and Planning Quarterly Review. Cuban families fear closure of Western Union offices, and Islamist terrorist stabbings leave 3 dead and several injured. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is Friday, October 30th, 2020. I am your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Nationally, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, or ECCB, in collaboration with its Financial Information Month, or FIM partners, hosted the 2020 FIM Online Business Symposium on Thursday, October 29th. The symposium was held to provide information to the public on how to remain financially resilient in the COVID-19 environment. Managing Director at Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange, Trevor Blake, presented on the topic, Living Through Rainy Days, How to Manage Your Money in Challenging Times. He spoke of the different ways persons can properly manage their money, which includes budgeting, saving, investing, and the proper way to spend. On the topic of debt, Blake said that persons can use debt effectively to acquire assets.
It's important sometimes to incur debt so that you could acquire certain things. I mean, most of us would never be able to save to buy a house. We have to get a mortgage to acquire a house. So it's important to have debt, but you have to use debt effectively. So you use it to acquire assets that you could benefit from currently and in the future.
He advised persons whose finance might have been affected by the pandemic to seek assistance from their bankers.
And conservative. We have to review our existing debt. Look at everything. Look and see how we could reduce our levels of debt and our level of debt servicing. Because the more money you spend on debt servicing, the less you have to save. Now, debt is important, and I don't want anybody to get me wrong. It's important sometimes to incur debt so that you could acquire certain things. I mean, most of us would never be able to save to buy a house. We have to get a mortgage to acquire a house. So it's important to have debt, but you have to use debt effectively. So you use it to acquire assets that you could benefit from currently and in the future. So not because your credit union or your bank may have a promotion on and say, oh, come, we reduce the interest rate. If you come now, you don't have to put down 10% as you would normally would. We've reduced the down payment to 0. I mean, it's good for the bank. Is it good for you? Must you incur that debt? What are you going to do with the monies that you borrow? Is it something that's going to be of benefit to you? Is it something that's going to be creating an asset for you that is beneficial in the long run? So look at these things very, very carefully, especially, and bankers like Chad like to throw up these promotions, especially as we come up to Christmas, and everybody, they want to grab as much of your money as they could, so they throw these sweeteners so that you could come in and incur debt. But be very judicious as you incur debt. Incur debt for the right reasons, not because there's a promotion going on.
Other presenters included owner of eCaribbean, Rodney Brown, who presented on the topic Embracing the Internet as a Tool for Everyday Living, and country manager for RBC St. Kitts and Nevis, Chad Allen, who presented on the topic It's Happening Online, Save Time, Save Money, and Stay Safe. The symposium is available to be viewed on the ECCB Connect's YouTube channel. And in other news, the Ministry of Agriculture held its third quarter policy and planning review meeting at the Department of Agriculture conference room on Thursday, October 30th. The meeting was held in keeping with the ministry's Agenda 2020 to assess the ministry's performance for the third quarter and to plan for the fourth quarter of 2020. During his opening remarks, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Ron Dublin Collins, explained the importance of having the quarterly review.
Today's meeting is very important for us as it provides a forum for us to take a serious look at what we are doing, where we are, and where we want to be, and how we intend to get there. The meeting seeks to build the foundation for collaboration and to allow for discussion and exchange of ideas. That's why I'm particularly happy that the representative of farmers and fishers are here to join with us, because we cannot do this on our own, and the collaborative effort of all stakeholders is critical.
In his presentation, Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, said the reports are presented during the quarterly reviews and they help to contribute towards policy development that can enhance the sector.
We're not just going to sit on that information and say it sounds good or that does not sound good enough. We are going to utilize the data that is presented. We're going to utilize the information that is presented to us as well, and also use that to shape policies and programs moving into the new year. Whether in land distribution, whether in water, whether in crop production, how can we increase that and improve on what we are delivering to our farmers? Those are the things that we are hoping to accomplish.
The Agriculture Minister also used the opportunity to encourage all stakeholders to do their part to push the agriculture industry.
I will say to all of us that with this new thrust that we have in agriculture, the whole Federation is looking towards the Department and Ministry of Agriculture to deliver. And when they mean deliver, deliver something substantial, so we can say that we are moving in the right direction in pushing agriculture to the heights that we know it can get to in this Federation. Not only the Federation, the administration has given us a mandate. We have had a stimulus package that we have been working with over the last 6 months or more. There have been some persons and farmers, that is, who have benefited from those stimulus packages. We want to ensure that all of these inputs that we are putting into agriculture, we realize some benefits in the end.
Presentations were made by all heads of units in the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Marine Resources. The audience was given the opportunity to ask questions following each presentation. The meeting also saw in attendance officials from the Ministry of Agriculture on ZIZ. And in other news, the 2021 Population and Housing Census in St. Kitts and Nevis will be made easier thanks to the introduction of digital tools. In past censuses, a paper-based system called Paper-Assisted Personal Interviews, or PAPI, was used. Interviewers used thick sheets of paper to manually collect data. Social statistician/demographer in the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Cornel Williams, said that the introduction of CAPI is a welcomed addition.
This year we are fortunate that we are transitioning to a paperless system. Come next year we're going to be using CAPI, computer assisted personal interviews, and actually tablets. So your Samsung tablets are going to be the instrument that we utilize. The questionnaire is electronic and it's in a software called Survey Solution, wherein it's dynamic.
He noted that one of the issues in the past involved the tedious task of interviewers having to manually take data and having to make note of changes.
Now with CAPI, that's done for you. Once you indicate male, it streamlines down to male-oriented questions. Once you indicate age, 15 and under, or under 15 or 15 plus, it streamlines further and guides you accordingly based on each response that you get. What this does for us is it reduces drastically error. But not only that, it increases exponentially the speed at which we can go from collecting data to providing information to people.
Mr. Williams said that there is a process that takes place before the data is collected.
The first thing is to create the questionnaire, draft the questions, convert it into an electronic format, in this case Survey Solutions, test on the tablets, and then we can proceed to collecting the data. Once you've collected that data, you have to review it, validate it, ensure it's of good quality, and of course you also have to ensure at every single step that it is accurate data. You must ensure that the data you're taking and turning into information is truly what comes from the public. You can't have a person saying they're 15 years old, but yet when we're finished, that person is showing up as 20 years old. So you have to maintain the integrity of
He noted that the data collected will be used for various reasons and by various entities. The data will also be utilized by Social Security for dependency purposes and pension planning. The census is to gather information about the general population to present a full and reliable picture of the population in the country, its housing conditions and demographic, social and economic characteristics. And as we wrap up, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, or ECCB, in collaboration with its Financial Information Month partners, hosted the 2020 FIM Online Business Symposium on Thursday, October 29th. The symposium was held to provide information to the public on how to remain financially resilient in the COVID-19 environment. We now move on to news on the regional scene. Long queues have formed outside Western Union branches across Cuba after the government said its local operations will be forced to close because of U.S. sanctions. Millions are relying on remittances from the U.S. to make ends meet. Al Jazeera's Emily Siu reports on that story.
These Cubans are waiting to pick up money sent from their relatives abroad. Millions here rely on remittances from the U.S. to make ends meet. But the money transfer company that allows them to get those payments is under threat. The government in Havana says it's being forced to shut down the local operation of Western Union due to new U.S. sanctions. Washington is banning anyone on U.S. soil from sending money to Cuba via the company because its local partner is a military-controlled firm. The U.S. accuses Cuba of profiting from the transfer business to oppress its people and fund interference in Venezuela.
We're the ones who are harmed, the people. There are people who can't work here for one reason or another and live off their children, their mother, their brother. And now this? Who's being harmed? The ones at the bottom, not those at the top.
I invite President Donald Trump to live here in Cuba for one day without family remittances we receive from Western Union. Just one day.
Independently of all the politics, I asked the U.S. to think about the people. And we need these situations resolved, no matter which party wins the election.
Analysts say Donald Trump is ratcheting up sanctions on Cuba in a bid to secure votes from Cuban Americans who fled from Fidel Castro's communist rule. About 1 million are registered voters in the key swing state of Florida. In a tweet, Cuba's foreign minister said the sanctions would hurt Cuban families. The new rules won't come into force until the end of November, meaning there's still time for Western Union and the government to come up with a new business arrangement with non-military companies.
As of now, Western Union employees have not had any news that they're going to close or anything. No information has arrived yet. We only received news that everything will stay normal until further notice.
It's not yet clear whether Western Union will be able to keep its 400 offices across Cuba open beyond November 27th, raising fears among many that they'll be out of pocket if they can't get help from abroad. Emily Sue, Al Jazeera.
Latin America has been badly hit by the coronavirus, and aid workers in Venezuela are warning the country is barely able to respond. With the healthcare system already on its last legs before the pandemic, Venezuelans are forced to resort to extreme measures to find help for themselves and their loved ones. Al Jazeera's Teresa Bo reports on that story.
Fighting COVID-19 is a major challenge in most countries. But in Venezuela, where hospitals are running short of medicines and staff, the battle is even harder. Elena Suazo goes every day to this hospital in Caracas to care for her father. She says her presence is the only guarantee her father will be looked after.
While my dad is there for me while he is alive, it is already a victory, and we have to thank God. One more day of life for him.
An ongoing economic crisis and sanctions are having a devastating effect in Venezuela. Thousands of healthcare workers have migrated. The government says it has tried to prepare hospitals in the country to fight COVID-19. This hospital, for example, has received help from Doctors Without Borders. It has running water and air conditioning, but it's the exception in the country these days. Janet Padron is in charge of the intensive care unit here, which is supposed to be one of the best prepared in the capital.
The health system in Venezuela had deteriorated greatly prior to COVID-19. Every doctor knows this. It's a matter about resources, about health and sanitary conditions, even within hospitals.
With a population of more than 28 million, authorities in Venezuela report fewer than 800 deaths by COVID-19. But the opposition says the figure is much higher because many people are afraid to go to a hospital or cannot get tested. Jessie Ochoa says her father died of COVID-19. She had to be isolated in a hotel with her family.
We were received by the National Guard and we were told that we were under their care, and if we tried to escape, we were going to go on trial for bacterial terrorism. Our rooms had no electricity, they were dirty, no water. It looked like a rat cave. It took a while before we were tested. We basically had to beg for a test because we wanted to get out of the hotel we were in.
Experts say Venezuela's economic crisis may have helped it this time. The lack of gasoline has reduced movement across the country and slowed down the spread of the virus. In spite of the daily struggles people face, President Nicolás Maduro announced earlier this week that Venezuela has produced a cure for COVID-19.
I want to announce Venezuela has created a medicine that stops coronavirus. After 6 months of trials, we can certify this study as part of the experts and scientists. With all proof, in the next days, we will go to the World Health Organization to ratify. Once it's ratified, we will start preparing the mass production of this molecule and give it to the world, a cure against coronavirus.
But many people in the country have doubts. Venezuela was once one of the richest countries in Latin America, and now millions are struggling just to survive. It's a crisis that has been looming for years, and that for now is unlikely to end anytime soon. Teresa Bo, Al Jazeera.
Moving on to news on the international scene, 3 people were killed and several others injured in what French President Emmanuel Macron said was an Islamist terrorist attack. A man armed with a knife attacked churchgoers in the French city of Nice. We hear more in this Euronews report.
The moment police entered the Notre Dame Basilica in the city of Nice, the site of the latest attack against France.
I just heard gunfire, and then I learned he had done awful things to people in there.
On Wednesday morning, a Tunisian national aged 21 entered the church armed with a knife, killing 3 people, including a 60-year-old woman who had her throat slit and the 55-year-old custodian of the church. Police were deployed across the city, and France's president rushed to the scene to announce he's more than doubling the number of soldiers on the streets nationwide, and to call for the French to stick together.
In France, there is only one community, the national community. And I want to tell all our fellow citizens, no matter their religion, if they believe or not, that we must be united in these times and not give in to the spirit of division.
As Emmanuel Macron spoke about national unity in view of the threat of terrorism, residents of the city of Nice, especially among the Catholic community, spoke about anger and about hoping that the government does more to protect them.
My first reaction is anger, because when we know there will be a drama, it's best to try to prevent it rather than discuss it afterwards. For a few days now, we have known there was a risk of attacks because of France and Erdogan and Al-Qaeda that launched a fatwa against France. We need to stop thinking everyone is nice, because that's not true.
France is still reeling from a number of attacks on its soil in recent weeks, including the killing of a teacher beheaded in the suburbs of Paris for teaching his students about freedom of speech. As authorities vow to fight in defense of France's core values, others question how many more lives that fight will claim.
30 officers were injured in violent protests sparked by the fatal shooting of a black man allegedly waving a knife in Philadelphia. More in this report.
Walter Wallace Jr., a 27-year-old black man, was shot and killed by 2 Philadelphia police officers Monday. It was all caught on camera, and we want to warn you the footage you are about to see may be difficult to watch. Police say Wallace was carrying a knife and walking toward the officers when they opened fire. The video, which was taken by a bystander on the scene, shows Wallace's mother chasing after her son before the shooting and then rushing over to him after shots were fired. Police drove Wallace to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. Wallace's father told the Philadelphia Inquirer his son suffered from mental illness. A 2015 study says at least 1 in 4 fatal law enforcement encounters involve an individual with serious mental illness. Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney says the shooting is under investigation and that he looks forward to a, quote, speedy and transparent resolution. The local police union has called for patience and says the officers involved are being vilified for, quote, doing their job. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump tweeted out the video of the shooting, saying cops made no attempts at de-escalating the situation.
Y'all killed us! Y'all killed one of us tonight!
Protests erupted in Philadelphia overnight as crowds took to the streets following the shooting in the city's Cobbs Creek neighborhood. In videos posted to social media, officers and protesters can be seen clashing as police tried to disperse crowds that had gathered in outrage in response to the shooting. In some clips, officers can be seen using their batons on protesters, while protesters can be seen throwing rocks and other items at police. According to the city's police department, 30 officers were injured and law enforcement vehicles were damaged, some set on fire. Businesses such as this Family Dollar store reported lootings. Dozens of people were arrested. Philadelphia saw similar protests and unrest back in May, following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Now, a local councilwoman from the area has demanded that Philadelphia police release body camera footage from the incident. We know that the Philadelphia Police Department has a body camera policy that requires these cameras to be activated during all law enforcement related encounters. But so far, there's been no mention of potential body camera footage or when that footage may be released.
And now for the weather. Present weather is cloudy. A moderate breeze of 17 miles per hour is moving from the east. Current temperature is 28 degrees Celsius. That's 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Seas are reaching 6 to 8 feet. A small craft advisory is in effect mainly for the waters to the northeast of the islands. Expect partly sunny and hazy conditions today with a 40% or moderate chance of showers and partly cloudy skies with a 20% or slight chance of showers tonight. Sunset today will be at 5:40 p.m. and the sun is expected to rise tomorrow at 6:09 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Have a good one.